The views and opinions expressed on America's Workforce Union podcast and its digital media channels are solely those of the speakers and do not necessarily represent the views and opinions of the producers or sponsors.
Welcome to the America's Workforce Radio Podcast, the flagship production of the American Workers Radio and Podcast Network, where organized labor and its never-ending fight to protect the rights of the American worker come first. Now, presented by LIUNA, Laborers International Union of North America. Here's your host, Ed Flash Ferens.
The Labor Department allocating $85 million to help states in expanding their registered apprenticeship programs. Meanwhile, lawmakers in Maryland ban required captive audience meetings. And today on the show, the Ironworker running for a seat in Congress. Welcome to the Thursday, April 16th edition of America's Workforce, where we're available on at least 5 platforms, including YouTube, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Pandora. Well, by now, you probably heard me say on the show it's important for workers, especially union brothers and sisters. If you want change, run for a seat either on a school board, a city council, state legislature, run for president. What the heck? Brian Poindexter is our featured guest on the show today. He is a longtime member of Ironworkers Local 17 in northeastern Ohio. About 19 years a member of the Ironworkers. Got an interesting story to tell. He is a 5-term councilman in one of the suburbs of Cleveland, Brook Park, the future home of the Cleveland Browns. He argues that Democrats let their worker-first message get crowded out by social issues. And he believes he can return those voters to the party. Now, there's 8 people in that race. 8 people in that race. And this is the first time he's a congressional candidate. And he has secured some notable endorsements, including Bernie Sanders, the Ohio AFL-CIO, the UAW, of course, the Ironworkers, they got to endorse him, and also some congressional reps, including Ro Khanna of California. So we're going to talk about the issues: economy, cost of living, workers' rights, unions, health care that makes sense, making sure we keep things made in America. Here's a website you want to go to, Poindexterforcongress.com, Poindexterforcongress.com. He is one to watch. Now, a brief look into the world of labor, the segment brought to you by Boyd Watterson Asset Management. We're talking nearly $40 billion of assets under advisement. You can find more at BoydWatterson.com. The U.S. Department of Labor announced this week the availability of approximately $85 million in funding to help states and territories fuel registered apprenticeship expansion and advance the administration's goal of reaching and surpassing 1 million active apprentices across the country. Administered by the department's Employment and Training Administration, the 4th round of state apprenticeship expansion formula grants provides direct funding to states and territories based on a new performance-based formula. The formula rewards states for recent growth in active and new apprentices and encourages strategies that increase employer participation. Now, I got to do a shout out to the trades, because the apprenticeship program in the skilled trades, often called the gold standard. Why? Because it's the best. Been around for decades, going back to, I think it's the 30s when it actually started. To qualify for the grants, eligible states and territories must commit to 3 core requirements: setting statewide registered apprenticeship expansion goals for increasing the total number of active apprentices, reserving a share of funds to directly support employers and registered apprentices in state-identified priority industries, and demonstrating a commitment to leveraging resources. Got a comment here from the Labor Secretary, Lori Chavez DeReamer. She says the goal here is a goal of 1 million active apprentices. States are essential partners in achieving this meaningful expansion. And we think with this funding opportunity, we can do it. Good stuff there. Good stuff there. Maryland's House has passed SB 417. What's that? It's a state law that would ban employers from holding captive audiences, requiring employees to attend meetings on politics, religion, or union membership under the threat of discipline. Now, the bill previously won Senate approval last month by a vote of 31-12. It is now headed to Governor Wes Moore's desk for signature, and if enacted, it would take effect at the beginning of October. Now, over a dozen other states have similar bans on captive audience meetings, though business interest groups have sued to challenge those laws in at least 4 other states, arguing that the bans violate the employer's First Amendment rights to speak freely and are subject to NLRA preemption. That's the National Labor Relations Act. The bill authorizes the state labor commissioner to investigate worker complaints and issue penalties of up to $10,000 for an employer's first violation, then $25,000 for subsequent violations, in addition to other relief such as reinstatement of a fired worker. Notably, the Maryland measure comes just 7 months after a district court judge issued an injunction against enforcement of California's captive audience ban, which suggests that states are nonetheless undeterred in their efforts to protect employee-free choice. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, the Ironworker running for a seat in Congress. His story right after this on America's Workforce.
You're listening to America's Workforce with Ed Flash Ferens.
Founded in 1887, the Brotherhood of Maintenance of Way Employees Division of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters represents the employees responsible for tirelessly constructing and maintaining the national rail system in America. For more than a century, the Brotherhood of Maintenance of Way Employees has proven they have what it takes to protect its members and meet the ever-changing challenges of the rail industry. Today, the BMWED continues to fight for job security, fair wages, better benefits, and safer, more modern work environments. For more information, please visit bmwe.org.
It takes LiUNA to build North America's infrastructure. From roads and bridges to schools and skyscrapers, the men and women of LiUNA, the Laborers International Union of North America, build the projects we depend on. From constructing the Freedom Tower on the site of the former World Trade Center to untangling Washington, D.C.'s congested interstate, LiUNA members do the work that matters. Find out what it takes to be built by LiUNA at liuna.org. That's liuna.org.
America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the Communication Workers of America. You can find more at cwa-union.org. America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers. You can find more at ifpte.org. This segment of the show is brought to you by the Brotherhood of Maintenance of Way Employees Division of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. For more information, please visit bmwe.org. Blue Cross and Blue Shield companies formed out of a need to provide affordable health care to teachers, loggers, and miners. We are now celebrating the 60th anniversary of the Blues, developing the National Labor Office to strengthen its commitment to organized labor. Blue Cross Blue Shield's National Labor Office remains focused on America's workers, advocating for affordable and equitable health care, partnering with strategic alliances to provide industry-leading products and services, and proudly serving more than 18 million unionized workers, retirees, and their families. Working hard for America's working families, for the health of America. Learn more by following them at Blue Labor on LinkedIn and X, formerly known as Twitter. America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the Ironworkers. You can find more at ironworkers.org.
Now, back to America's Workforce. Here's Ed Flash Ferens.
And remember, you can check us out on Facebook or follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter. That would be AWF Union Podcast, AWF Union Podcast. You know, for a number of years, it started when the pandemic hit back in 2020. We hosted the show out of Ironworkers Local 17, made a whole lot of friends that really enjoyed that group. a feisty bunch, I might add. One of them is going to be joining us here on our podcast here momentarily. That would be Brian Poindexter, who's running for Congress. And I say this on the show so many times, it's important. If you don't like what's going on in the country, maybe you should run for Congress. And I'll tell you, a lot of union brothers and sisters are doing just that. We got our eye on a number of races. Let's go to Brian Poindexter right now. Here's a website you want to go to, poindexterforcongress.com. Longtime ironworker, 5-term councilman in the city of Brook Park, the future home of the Cleveland Browns. Brian, welcome back to America's Workforce. You and I have talked about the Browns moving there. In fact, I drove by that area just a couple of days ago, and I'm seeing some dirt moving over there. This is going to be pretty interesting. It's going to change the whole complexion of Brook Park, Ohio. I know you played a big role in that, but let's concentrate on what you want to do next here and your background. Let's start right there. Why don't you reacquaint our listeners with who you are? Why did you get involved in the trades? Let's start right there, brother. Go ahead.
Well, Flash, I first want to say thank you for having me on your show today. Grateful to be here. I love what you do, fighting for working people. And that's kind of why I got into this race for Congress, because I also believe in fighting for working people. As you said, I longtime member of Ironworkers Local 17, been a member for 18 years, actually going on 19 years later this year. It's a career that changed my life. You know, I wasn't always a union member, Flash. I started working at 15 years old, and I didn't get into the ironworkers till I was 27. I worked a lot of years without union. I was grateful to have found a union because I saw the difference. It was a stark difference between what I had and what I was starting to gain. You know, I went through the apprenticeship program, started in 2007, graduated in 2012. I wanted that for other people too, you know, my friends, my family, you know, other working people. So I became a union organizer. And as a union organizer, that's where my eyes were really open to how the laws are stacked against working people. And I felt compelled to do something about it. So as a union organizer, I tried my best. It was hard on my family. So I went back to the field, put the belt on. But, you know, once your eyes are open, you can't close them again. So I was really restless in the evenings. Like, I gotta do something to change things for us. Every job I worked, people would say, we need somebody like us in Washington. Nobody around is stepping up. So anyway, so I got involved in city council, ran my first race in 2017, ended up winning, took the seat in 2018. Been there ever since, little over 8 years now. I'm in my 5th term currently. It just seems like Washington is so out of touch with what we're going through. They either don't know what we're going through or they don't care what we're going through. And either way, we got to make change. So we launched this campaign early this year in January. January 15th was our official launch date. And we are running on a campaign of just putting workers first. We're not playing the partisan games. I'm not alienating Republicans. I am a Democrat, but we're not alienating Republicans. We are fighting for working people. I don't care if you're a Democrat, independent, or a Republican. We're all feeling the pain of an economy that doesn't work for us. We need an economy that works for all of us, not just the wealthy. We need an economy that is built to reward work and not wealth. And that's what I'm fighting for. We call it the Holy Trinity in our campaign of what we're fighting for. We're fighting for fair wages to combat affordability. We're fighting for access to quality, affordable health care. And we're fighting for secure and dignified retirement. Those 3 things are a uniting factor. That's what unions unite around. And that's what I think will unite our country if we just stick to those main issues. Like you said, you know how union ironworkers are. We're a little rough around the edges. We rarely agree on anything. We'll dig in about sports. We'll argue over the weather. You know, we'll battle it out over politics, but try to mess with our jobs. And we unite like, you know, you wouldn't believe. Try to take our benefits away and we're all over you like white on rice. Try to take our pension and you're in for the fight of your life. And that concept isn't exclusive to unions. That's all working people. We all work for a living to earn those things. And Washington has lost that, and we need to change that.
Right now, there are 8 people seeking the nomination for the Democratic Party, and that's going to be the May primary. You're the only union guy in that bunch, right?
Yes, I'm the only proud union member in the bunch, yes.
Okay, good. So with that being said, right away, a lot of union support, correct?
Well, yeah, so, I mean, and I don't want to take this for granted. You know, I'm a union guy. I wear it on my sleeve. But unions aren't going to just throw the support behind me just because I'm another union member. What I've shown in my 8 years on city council and in my career as an ironworker is that I'm somebody that they're confident in supporting, because I'm not going to go out there and make the unions look bad, or they're not supporting me in vain. They know that I'm a fighter. They know that I represent myself well, represent my family well, and I'll represent the union well. They're not just willy-nilly lining up behind us. They're supporting us because of who I am, what I stand for, and what we're fighting for.
Brian, let me ask you this. In today's media environment, we are bombarded with messages. Often it's wrong messaging, disinformation, misinformation, and all that. I have to ask you how you're getting your message out there, because it's so convoluted. And there's so many people, they don't even want to hear about politics anymore. How are you getting through to so many people right now to make sure that you get that nomination?
Flash, we are running a ground up campaign. We are leaving no stone unturned. We are using all avenues at our disposal. But really, when you break it all down, though, Flash, it really just boils down to where we are taking it back to the old school, where we're knocking on doors, we're going to events, we're going to rallies, we're going to town halls. We are meeting people where they are. And I don't even care if, I'm running as a Democrat in a Democratic primary, but I'm speaking to Republican folks too. The message is strong. The message is clear that if you work for a living, we're fighting for you. I don't care if you shower before work or if you shower after work. We all have to work for a living, unless you're the boss. If you're the boss, you don't have to work for a living. We work for the bosses, right? If you're not the boss, we're fighting for you. And I don't care if you're white collar, blue collar, if you work in a factory or on a farm, we're fighting for you. And people are really resonating around that. We're meeting people where they are. And then once we make that connection, they kind of get the message out for us to their friends, to their families, and say, hey, man, you got to check this guy out. He's a worker just like us. And people have really been coming out of the woodwork to support us. And it's overwhelming, to be honest with you, and humbling.
Brian, gerrymandering has taken over all around the country, and in the party in charge, which is the GOP in the state of Ohio, they've carved out a district, and maybe you can explain the district that you're running in, because that has changed over time and how difficult that is, especially for a Democrat. What's the makeup right now?
The district include parts of Cuyahoga County, which is the western suburbs and the southern suburbs around Cleveland. Westlake, Bay Village, Rocky River, North Olmsted, Fairview Park, and then pretty much Olmsted Township straight over to Solon. That's the Cuyahoga County portion. And then it includes all of Medina County, all of Ashland County, and the north half of Wayne County. And Wayne County splits right at Worcester, right along US 30. Now, it is gerrymandered, but I think that's the Republicans are taking their voters for granted. They think, oh, these are our voters. They're always going to be our voters, no matter what. We'll draw this in. We'll save these seats. And I'm not buying it. Our message isn't a Democratic message. It isn't a partisan message. It is a message of working people. And if you look at the area, traditionally, it's always been pro-worker. It's always been pro-union. It's always been people who know the value of work. And I think that's why we're really strong in this race, because we are running that type of campaign. We are highlighting workers. For the longest time, Republicans and even Democrats look down on workers, look down on people who work for a living. I'm here to tell you today that if you wear work boots, you are just as valuable as that person who wears that suit to work. And it's time we start treating workers with more respect. It's time we start rewarding work and not punishing work. And I don't think the gerrymander is really going to matter in this race. I'm hoping that Democrats, I'm a fellow Democrat, I'm hoping we wake up to that fact too and realize that our first and foremost message, the reason our party was founded, was to fight for working people. And over the last few election cycles, that message has been muffled. I'm here to bring that message back to the forefront and fight for people like us who work for a living.
So it sounds to me your message is pretty much the same message, whether you go into a more Democratic area, like you mentioned, Cuyahoga County, and the burbs that you're campaigning in, versus the rural areas, which is traditionally more Republican, because the issues I'm looking on your campaign page, which is poindexterforcongress.com, economy, cost of living, that affects everybody. Workers' rights and unions, okay, that may be narrowed a little bit. Healthcare, well, of course, we know about how healthcare has become so unaffordable. and then made in America. So you're carrying that message pretty much to all parts in the district then, correct?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, it's the same message, and I'm not one of these politicians that change my message based on the audience that I'm in front of, and that message is clear. The price of gas goes up in Wayne County, it goes up in Cuyahoga County. If the price of groceries go up across the board, it affects every single one of us. We're all feeling that pinch. I believe a lot of Republicans, especially this cycle, are feeling betrayed by the policies of this administration and by the Congress who's enabled the policies to take hold. Our message is clear. Our message is strong. And I'm not the prototypical politician. I'm the guy next door. I'm the guy down the street helping the old lady with her garbage. I have a connection with people in the district. I'm from the heart of the district. I have a record to run on city council. And I'm really just being who I am. If you see me here on this podcast, or if you see me in the streets, I'm the guy you can come up to, say hello. I'll tell you a story. We'll crack a few jokes. But at the end of the day, we're going to stand up for each other. We've been at each other's throats as working people for far too long. It's time for us to unite around that common cause that we're all hurting, and we all need to build each other up. That's why my message is strong.
Brian, I got to take a quick break here. Two more things I want to get into. You got some pretty notable endorsements. Also, you mentioned your record in Brook Park, Ohio City Council. We can talk about that and how that will help you win that seat, okay? Brian Poindexter, our featured guest on the show today. On behalf of Ironworkers Local 17, one of the many proud sponsors, I might add, here on America's Workforce, on behalf of the Great Lakes District Council, PoindexterForCongress.com is a website you want to go to. Back in a few minutes. Once again, you're listening to America's Workforce.
This is America's Workforce. More shows available at awfradio.com.
It takes LIUNA to keep America running. Over 70,000 public employees are part of LIUNA, the Laborers International Union of North America, delivering critical services such as healthcare and emergency response, as well as maintaining roads and sanitation systems. Even the National Postal Mail Handlers Union, representing over 47,000 U.S. postal workers, is affiliated with LIUNA. Find out what it takes for LIUNA to keep America running at liuna.org. That's LIUNA.org.
There is unity and strength for workers.
We are the USW.
We are the USW.
The United Steelworkers.
The largest industrial union in North America.
We represent 850,000 members in the U.S., Canada, and the Caribbean.
We work in metals,
rubber,
chemicals,
paper,
oil refining,
atomic energy,
and the service sector.
We are steelworkers, standing strong and fighting for what's right.
America's Workforce is presented by the Laborers International Union of North America. Feel the power right now at liuna.org.
America's Workforce is sponsored in part by Boyd Watterson Asset Management, LLC. Find out more about our investment solutions tailored to meet the needs of Taft-Hartley funds at boydwatterson.com.
America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, where you can find more at teamster.org. America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the United Steelworkers. You can find more at usw.org. The Ironworkers Great Lakes District Council, consisting of 8 ironworker local unions in West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Michigan. We build the skylines and bridges along the Great Lakes. With more work than ever before, the Great Lakes District Council is actively searching out the next great ironworker, whether it's building the next Intel plant or constructing a bridge to safely connect our great cities along the lake. So join the Ironworkers Great Lakes District Council today. Find out how and learn more about the council by visiting iwdistrictcouncil.com.
America's Workforce Radio is sponsored in part by the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades, District Council 6, representing painters, glazers, drywall finishers, and sign and display industry workers. They remind you that belonging to a union is your right as an American.
Now, back to Ed Flash Ferens with America's Workforce.
And remember, you can check us out on at least 5 platforms, many ways to access America's Workforce. You can check us out on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Pandora. When you get an opportunity, give us a rating. We always appreciate those 5-star ratings. We've been getting many of those. And thank you for keeping America's Workforce the #1 union podcast in all of America. awfpodcast.com is a website you want to go to. PoindexterForCongress.com is a website you also want to go to, especially if you're in the Northeast Ohio area, which has been gerrymandered so many times. Joining us as our featured guest is Brian Poindexter, Ironworkers Local 17, almost 19 years a member there. Brian, two things I want to get into. I want to get into your notable endorsements, but you mentioned about your time at Brook Park. Well, you're still a councilman in Brook Park, Ohio. Talk to me about your track record there. We talked in the first segment about making sure that workers have a voice. Well, you have a voice right now here on this podcast. What have you done over? And Brook Park's a pretty worker-friendly city. Let's be honest about that. But maybe some legislation you could call attention to, what you did in Brook Park, what you could maybe do in Congress. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm glad you bring that up. So before I get into the legislation I've brought to help working people in Brook Park, I just want to highlight the fact that on my literature, when I run for office in Brook Park, I always put 100% callback rate. I think that's huge. The fact that you have a representative who has a 100% callback rate. You call me and I address your issue. And I want to bring that same energy to Washington. If you call the congressional office for the 7th district now, he's going to respond with a canned response or not even acknowledge that you even called the office. It's the United States House of Representatives. I believe somebody should be representing you if you have your issue. Now, to legislation I brought forward, in 8 years, I've represented working people fairly well in Brook Park. One of the first initiatives I brought forward on city council when I first got on back 2018 is I brought forward a resolution opposing any kind of right to work law at the state house. So we drafted a resolution. It ended up passing through city council, and we sent a letter to the state legislators and senators saying that Brook Park stands united in rejecting any form of right to work law. One of the proudest moments in my career as an elected official, and it happened in my first year. Since that time, I brought forward legislation to support postal banking because we lost a post office, which would help the postal workers repurpose the facilities and reuse the facilities of the closing post offices that were being shut down. That was probably back in 19 or 20, right before COVID. Trying to come up with ways to help other workers outside of our traditional realm of what we know as traditional workers, right? Our postal workers are very valuable, and to see the post office is closing and they're cutting the staff and all that kind of stuff, it was a national movement to try to help them gain some more work. In addition, I've always supported our service workers, our police, our fire, never having once voted against their union-approved contract. Always supported them and make sure they have the equipment and tools necessary to do their jobs. One of the highlights of my council career, I introduced legislation to start our technology and innovation committee in our city, which was very imperative during the COVID years when we were doing live stream council meetings, stuff like that. We really helped facilitate the technology to make sure that we were still getting to people, the message to people of what's going on in the city. That committee also helped formulate plans to live stream basketball games. Remember the days when people couldn't go watch their kids play sports? We were just kind of coming out of COVID, and they were allowed maybe 2 fans in the stands. That committee then helped do that kind of stuff. And we've been making upgrades within the city, as far as sounds and lighting and things like that ever since. That committee's still roaring full steam ahead to this day. Very proud of that accomplishment.
I admire your tenacity on the move by the Cleveland Browns over to Brook Park, which is, it created a lot of flack, especially those downtown. Hey, you got to keep it in Cleveland. But I get it, but that's been happening all around the country. I think the important part here is the number of jobs that project is going to create. I know that was your message on that whole thing. And more importantly, union jobs. Talk to me about that, Brian.
I understand that some people aren't for that project or some people are against it. Some people like the project. They don't like the way it's funded. We can have that discussion, but I'll stand behind the project. One, as a ironworker, I'm very proud that my brothers and sisters are going to be working on that project. But all the trades, the building trades in general, It's estimated to create 6,000 union construction jobs. I mean, that's a huge amount of work that stabilizes the region. Construction is an industry that really builds up a community, but it also it stabilizes a community as well. And to keep the thousands of tradesmen and women in our area working, that in itself is a benefit. Now, as a Brook Park City Council member, I'm certainly excited to have that kind of economic development in our region. Now, that site was slated to be warehouses before this project even came up. They were expecting, after complete build out, maybe 300 jobs. So it's a net positive in the fact that, not only we're going to have the 6,000 construction jobs, but then there's going to be estimated anywhere from 6,000 to 8,000 jobs after the construction's completed, with the development of the hotels and the restaurants and the bars and the shopping and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's a net positive, not only for Brook Park, but the region as a whole. And then the other side of that, people aren't really considering the fact that now Cleveland is going to have a blank canvas on the lakefront to develop. There's more construction jobs there, and there's more vitality there. So now you have a net positive in Brook Park. You have a net positive in Cleveland. I don't see how regionally, if you're looking at it as a region as a whole, I don't see how you don't view that as a positive all the way around.
Brian, I want to talk about endorsements here. By the way, our featured guest today is Brian Poindexter, longtime ironworker, 19 years, almost 19 years, and 5-term councilman in the city of Brook Park, Ohio. And I tell you, you definitely hit the ground running here. There are 8 people in the race, but they don't have endorsements like you do. And one of them from Bernie Sanders. How did that come about? That's pretty cool. Talk to me about that.
So it's actually been kind of a whirlwind since we launched in January, on January 15th. So, when we launched our campaign, we created a great video. And if you haven't seen it on poindexterforcongress.com, I urge you to check that out. And from that video, we got national attention after that video was launched. We had an article early on written about us in Roll Call. They highlighted our campaign as the strongest chance to flip this district. Well, from that, we made connections with other folks in Congress, Chris DeLuzio in Pennsylvania and Ro Khanna in California, both who are members of the Labor Caucus, saw that, and they was like, whoa, we got to get in touch with this guy. So they called me, and then they end up endorsing me after a couple of conversations. And then, 6 degrees of separation, Bernie Sanders' campaign caught wind of us, and our team started communicating, and we had a couple conversations. He liked the message. As you know, Bernie Sanders has been fighting for working people for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
And honestly, when I got that endorsement, I told the Senator Sanders about how I got into politics to begin with. So in 2016, when he was running for president, I went to his rally at Cleveland State. It was there I felt like he was speaking directly to me, but he was speaking to all of us young folks at the time, saying, you need to get involved in your school boards and your city councils. That's where you can make a real difference. And I heeded that call. And in 2017, I filed for council. So to come 10 years later, circle back and be endorsed by Senator Sanders, I mean, it means everything to me. And it tells me that I'm fighting for the right things and I'm in the right place.
And of course, you can add the union endorsements. I see the Ohio AFL-CIO, the UAW, and of course, your union, Ironworkers International. Not 17 is all part of that too, but Ironworkers International, that says a lot. And I'm sure there's more to come. Brian, thank you so much for your time. Good luck to you. This is going to be tough. There's 8. You're one of 8. You're the only union guy in the race. So keep in touch with us. You got our support here on America's Workforce. We need more people like yourself in the halls of Congress. No doubt about that. No doubt in my mind. Poindexterforcongress.com is a website to go to. Stay safe and stay in touch, okay? Good luck to you, brother.
Flash, I just want to say thank you for having me today. I would like to send a message to all other working people out there who listen to your podcast that, hey, you should get involved too. I'm not anybody special by myself, but when we all stand together and united, there's not a damn thing we can't do. And I'm urging you to get involved in your school boards, get involved in your local elections, start building a coalition of people who fight for working people. And it makes all the difference. Thank you, Flash, again. I appreciate you having me on the show, and I'll see you soon.
And that'll be it for another edition of America's Workforce coming up tomorrow. the American Legion, and the Alliance for Retired Americans. Until then, all of you have a safe and wonderful day.
That concludes another episode of the America's Workforce Radio Podcast. Thanks for listening, and be sure to subscribe so you never miss a show. America's Workforce is a production of Labor Tools and BMA Media Group. Find out more information online at labortools.com.